Are you thinking about retiring before you turn 59 and a half? Well, today we dig into another method for accessing retirement funds without incurring the 10% early withdrawal penalty. So let's get started. All right. Welcome to another episode of A Worthwhile Retirement. I am Jacob George, and today we continue our series on accessing the funds inside of our retirement accounts before we turn 59 and a half. But before we do, just remember that the information we discuss here is general in nature and that it should not be taken as investment advice specific to your particular situation. Okay. So if you recall, last week, we began our discussion into how to access money in our retirement accounts early, meaning before we turn 59 and a half. So we know one way, and that is the rule of 55, taking distributions out of our employer's retirement plan, such as a 401k or a 403b, if we are leaving that employer in the year we turn 55 or sometime after that point. But what if you've already rolled over that 401k into an IRA? Or maybe there's not much money in your particular 401k. Then you will most certainly want to be familiar with the next method we will talk about today. So let's dive right in. You may have heard of a rule in the tax code called Rule 72T. And under this rule, anyone can make withdrawals out of their retirement plans through what they call substantially equal periodic payments, or SEPPs. And you can make these withdrawals without incurring the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Now, what exactly does this all mean? Well, if you do decide to exercise this option using these substantially equal periodic payments, then you must commit to a given time frame in order to avoid the penalty. And that time frame is either for 5 years or until you reach age 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So the shortest time that you would have to commit to making these withdrawals is 5 years. So if you implement this strategy when you're 57, then you'll have to continue it until you're 62, even though you'd already turned 59 and a half. And on the flip side of that, if you began your series of withdrawals when you were 40, you would have to continue these withdrawals for nearly 20 years until you are 59 and a half. So first we have this time frame aspect that we have to commit to. That's our first stipulation. And the next condition is that you can't withdraw however much you want to. In fact, there are very specific calculations to predetermine how much you will be required to withdraw. And it doesn't really make sense to get into these calculations in this setting, but there are plenty of online calculators to give you an idea of what this amount would be for you. I've attached one of those calculators in the show notes for this episode, and I've actually used it to go ahead and give us a quick example. So let's say you are 55 years old and you have $1 million in the account that you'll be initiating these withdrawals from. Then you might expect to be able to withdraw approximately $60,000 each year. Now, the two main factors that you would have some control over are your age when you choose to begin these withdrawals and the account balance of whichever account you want to start these withdrawals from. When it comes to your age, the older you are, the closer you are to retirement, the larger your withdrawals can be. And the more money in the account, the larger those withdrawals could be as well. Okay, so those are the main conditions of the agreement. You have to commit to a given time frame of at least 5 years, and there are some calculations that constrict the amount you can withdraw. Now, when it comes to the amount you can withdraw, I will typically speak of this topic in terms of how much you are able to withdraw under this rule. How much can you take out? And the reason for that is this. While there is an upper limit to how much you can take out, there is not really a minimum for how little you choose to take out. So yes, while you do have to commit to the time frame of these withdrawals, you can make them as small as you're comfortable with. But Jacob, I thought you just said that I couldn't pick how much I want to withdraw, but that the amount would be based on a calculation. And that's true. But remember, one of those factors that the calculation is based off of is the balance of the account. Not your balance of all your accounts, just the one that you want to start this series of withdrawals out of. And if you didn't already know this, you can have multiple accounts of the same type. I could have 4 IRAs if I really wanted to. There seems to be no limit on the amount of accounts that you can have. And so what I could do, and many practitioners will say I should do, is create a separate IRA, transfer a portion of those funds that I want to be factored into this calculation, and designate this IRA as the one that I'll be initiating Rule 72T on. So before I commit to making a series of these withdrawals, I can make that amount as small as I want by transferring a balance into a separate IRA where I want that balance to be used when it comes to determining the annual withdrawal requirement. And because of this flexibility, it could also make sense to plan for an amount maybe on the lower side, on the more conservative side of what you might need to take out. Because if for whatever reason you decide that the amount you planned on isn't enough, that you need more income available, then you could begin an additional series of withdrawals out of yet another IRA that you can create and then fund to come up with that difference. Because yes, you can have multiple streams of these withdrawals happening at the same time. That is allowed by Rule 72T. But you do have to commit to a totally separate timetable for each individual account. So make sure you are not only willing to commit to that, but that you're also willing to keep up with it. That is very, very important. Because what happens if you don't remember to make your withdrawal? Or if you withdraw an amount that is different than the agreed upon amount? What happens? Well, then you would lose your exemption from the 10% early withdrawal penalty. And the penalty would even apply retroactively to all the withdrawals you had taken in the series up until that point. And this would all be happening in the same tax year. So it is certainly something you would want to avoid. Remember, the whole point of all this was to avoid the 10% penalty in the first place. And finally, the last consideration that we need to mention is that once you begin a series of these substantially equal periodic payments, you cannot contribute or distribute any funds on that account until the series is complete. So until your committed time frame is over, your account is essentially frozen in a sense. You can't make any contributions into it, and you can't take any withdrawals out of it, except for the withdrawal that you are required to take out. And this is another reason why it's usually highly recommended to designate an IRA specifically for this purpose. And that is it. That is Rule 72T, another method for accessing retirement funds early. So be sure to tune in next time as we continue our series, and I will see you then.